It's the final word, Women's Ashes Daily. Adam Collins and Jeff Lemon for Westfield, London, Westfield, Stratford City. More extra, less ordinary. What a day of cricket that was at Southampton. Jeff, 30 seconds to sum it up.
Australia made more runs than they made last time. 282. Perry makes 91 through the middle after they lose 2 wickets early. There's a consolidation job with Sutherland, makes her first ODI 50. Ecclestone, 2 wickets and an over, gets both of them towards the end when they're about to launch. But then Wareham comes in and launches 26 off the last over. What are you doing? 3 sixes. And then England, they make a great fist of it. Beaumont makes 60 at a runner ball. They lose a couple early. Nat Sciver-Brunt comes in. She starts batting through the innings. A couple more wickets fall. They seem like they're nowhere. They need 80 with her batting with Sarah Glenn. And they nearly bloody get there. They fall 3 runs short. She needed 6 off the last ball. England can't get the Ashes back.
Australia have retained the Women's Ashes. They needed to put on 80 for the last stand, as you say, and got 76 of them. That was all in the space of 11.2 overs. It was a valiant effort from Glenn and Sciver-Brunt, who finishes unbeaten on 111 from 99 deliveries. I think I mentioned on Storytime a couple of days ago that I spoke to Nat and interviewed her for a piece just before the series, and she felt, and she was right in feeling this, that they were as close as they've ever been to beating Australia at home. And I mean, it has that old, what's that old adage about football, you know, 2 teams play for 90 minutes and Germany win? Like, it feels like that, but the Australian cricket team in place of the German football team. Like, somehow...
Except for the last few weeks, last couple of weeks, last 10 days, when it's changed.
But I guess when it matters most is the point here, is that when it really mattered today, Georgia Wareham plays a sparkling hand of 37 not out from 15 balls when it mattered most. Took down Lauren Bell, picked up 2 wickets early on, albeit the second of those was catching practice from Healy. But Bell in the slot, just as she was to Harmanpreet Kaur when she was on a roll at Canterbury last year. And that is the difference. That Australia won the biggest moments, and it was too much, even for Nat Sciver-Brunt, who is at the peak of her powers, to finish the job for England. I'm gutted for them, you know, because this had going down to the final game all over it, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. And there was also the chance that if the final game is washed out, then this would have been the decider.
Big chance, rain at Taunton on Tuesday.
You know, the forecast isn't looking great. So 3 runs the difference. And I suppose if it does rain on Tuesday, then maybe it's good that this was the decider. I don't know.
Definitely.
Rather than sort of having it ending up being, I mean, that doesn't even make any sense numerically, but I'm quite confused. I'm quite emotional. It's been one of the, like, you watch those games, halfway through that second innings, you're like, well, Australia are romping this. They're going to win it easily, and they don't. Now, I didn't even mention Alana King in the 30-second summary. I didn't mention Australia picking 2 leg spinners. This was key for me. This was, if I can use the language of the time, clutch, in that when I was sitting there at Bristol, and you might even find this in the preamble for the OBO, I was like, why aren't they picking both the leg spinners on this pitch in Bristol, which is generally slow, and this one looks like one of the slow ones, one of the brown ones. You don't need your faster bowlers. You want everyone to take the pace off the ball. Pick every spinner at your disposal. Pick Jess Jonathan, pick Alana King, pick Georgia Wareham, get Ashley Gardner in there, get everybody involved who can bowl slow. You know, if there's someone in the coaching staff who bowls slow, get him in there. And they didn't pick both the leg spinners. They left King out, and I thought that was a major misstep. And they ended up going for over 100 off the first, 108 off the first 12 overs or thereabouts.
Should have opened the bowling with Shelley Nitschke, the coach, to bowl some left arm spin. Everyone should have bowled.
Exactly.
You're right.
Get the doc involved.
Your point's right. And look, I'm not sure if you put this in your Guardian piece. We were talking about it off air before, that in 2005, Australia's men fell short at the final hurdle, and part of that was not picking their 2 best bowlers, who happened to be 2 spinners, 2 leg spinners at that, with Warner McGill. Australia get it right at the right time. Australia get things right at the right time. They go through World Cup campaigns where they have a wobble, where they don't, when it doesn't look right structurally, and they find a way of adjusting and getting back on track just when they need to. It was all, I mean, England were on a roll. They were riding the wave of the crest of the wave, momentum, whatever you want to call it, heading into today, and Australia have gotten the way. And again, it comes down to what Wareham did with the bat. Absolutely. Perry consolidating after the early wickets, having that support from Sutherland, who'd never done that on that stage with the bat like that before.
And contrasting efforts, right? So, I mean, Perry, because Perry's coming out at first drop, where she's done most of her work at 4. It's usually landing at 3. Sure. Perry's had to come in at 3 through this series. She's had to come in early both times. She does that again, and she's got a fair bit of work to do. But she always made sure to keep, like, they were generally getting 4 or 5 off and over. She was ticking that over often enough. She'd play an attacking shot here and there just to make sure, okay, we're keeping the rate up, we're not getting too far behind. And then when Sutherland comes in, she goes after them. She scores 20 out of her first 20 balls and hits 3 fours in and over. takes to the bowling enough to keep pushing the rate up so that Perry's able to continue to sit back and bat all the way, almost all the way through. And they get to within sort of 3-4 overs of the close. They're both dismissed in that Ecclestone over. Canny from Heather Knight, because she bowled a lot of Ecclestone through the middle, and I thought you bowled too much Sophie Ecclestone before the 40th over. She had 2 in hand from Ecclestone and then held them back and used them at different points through the last 10. And that's key, but you've still got a hitter who can come in next.
Yeah, and Australia have that faith in Jonathan bowling left arm round the wicket to the right-handers and aiming it low into the base of the leg stump at the end, and England got the best bowler in the world. So that made for a great contest as well. Heather Knight said on TMS when it was all over that it's the greatest series she's played in. It might be the greatest women's series ever bilateral. And I'm like, yeah, that's a fairly good shout, because in the past, you'll go back in history and you'll see where sides have come from behind it and all the rest of it. But the multi-format series contests have been largely one-sided. Even the drawn one in 2017 felt one-sided because Australia went 8-4 up in the last 2 games that England won the T20 format at Manuka. They didn't feel like they had as much riding on them.
Yeah.
By the way, just a segue from that to say that I don't think 8-all, if England were to win on the final day at Taunton, if they get up and they get on and they win, I don't think it should be called an Ashes retention. I think I'm a bit off on this. I get why in Test series historically sides have retained the trophy at the end of it, but this is multi-format cricket. It doesn't feel like, I mean, I think a drawn series is okay. I think having the trophy shared is fine. I don't think we need to do like following in the slipstream of men's cricket and with Test cricket. I don't know whether we, and of course the solution to all of this is having the points redistributed in a way that's done with some
In a
odd
way
numbers.
where you can't really, where it's harder to get a tied result.
5
What
for the
if-
Test, 3 for the one days, 2 for the one days, and 1.5 for the drawn Test.
Yep, you can. There are still
my
ways
model.
that you can draw that series. What if, say it's a tie for the last match, you play super over, you decide the last match, then you're even on points, then you play another super over for the series. Now we're talking.
A bowl out. They've had that at Taunton before after a T20, I'm pretty sure, where they
Yep.
use the indoor school for a bowl off. That's what might be required on Tuesday.
So Ellyse Perry today still doing the job, 16 years on, debuted in 2007.
Wow.
I kind of liked the fact that she got out for 91 because Ellyse Perry's one-day career is not about hundreds.
No.
She's only made a couple of them. She made her 30th half-century in one-day cricket today in, 120-odd matches? Like
And how
maybe
long
less
did it
than
take
that.
her to reach her first 20-odd 50s run converted, right?
Yeah,
It
it
took
was
her ages.
24 or 25. She didn't make 100 for ages, but she genuinely doesn't care that much about making hundreds. Like, seeing how sort of relaxed she was about getting out for 99 in the Test match, she was like, oh well, would have been nice to get it, but so be it. She genuinely didn't seem bothered, and I don't think it was just putting it on. I think, yeah, she would like to make 100, but she's not that invested in that sort of statistical part of it. It was, can you put together a match-winning innings for your side? And yeah, today she did.
I think it's fitting that Ellyse Perry's final series in England will be with Australia retaining the Ashes as well. Like, she's an all-time great. I remember interviewing her 4 years ago at Taunton after she made a Test century, and she was like, well, I may not be still playing international cricket in 4 years from now. You can be sure that she won't be doing it 4 years from this point because of the wear and tear. And as you point out, 16 years in international, it's one of the great careers. When we go back and review it when she finally does retire, we'll point at days like today when she was, in cricketing terms, getting long in the tooth. Feels weird to talk about that with Perry, who'll be forever young, but nevertheless, that she was still able to step up when the pressure was on, and it goes back to having that phlegmatic personality that you described there, that she is able to step back from the heat of a situation and keep things in perspective. And 91 today, which I've said that Wareham was match winning. Well, Perry made it possible for him to do what she did.
Perry and Sutherland with that big partnership. And then Georgia, well, you mentioned wear and tear. Georgia Wareham, Georgia Terham, she did. I reckon up until that point, up until 47 overs are bowled, they're nip and tuck, and both sides are relatively happy with where they're at. I think like you'd probably get both teams to accept that if it was a bid 3 hours beforehand. What would you say, Heather Knight, if you could have them say
265
7 for 240 after 47
yeah,
or 7 for 260? It looked like Australia were going to be held short of the 263 they made at Bristol because England bowled really well through the middle part. They kept things tight. Nat Sciver-Brunt bowled a couple of really good spells, just hitting a hard length, which meant that they couldn't do much with it. They couldn't really pull the ball. They couldn't really drive it. They were just hitting it down the ground for ones. They had the sweep as well placed. And so there'd be an over that might go for 7, but there'd be an over that would go for 2. And they kept everything in check, everything broadly in check. And it was like, okay, England will be chasing something similar to what they chased at Bristol. They'll be happy. And then it's those last 3 overs, a few runs start flowing, and that last over, 26 off it. Wareham is the cleanest hitter. I mean, Grace Harris can maybe hit it longer, but there's something about the sound of contact off Wareham's bat. I remember watching her make 50 off 20 odd balls for the Renegades maybe three or four seasons ago, and that was when you were like, holy hell, you know, there is a talent here that hasn't been tapped. She almost won Australia the T20 at the Oval with her hitting over the leg side, and the cleanness of the way she hits 3 sixes over mid-wicket and one sort of more wide long on, crack, 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 and every time Bell twice tries to drive the ball into the pitch and bowl a slower ball bouncer outside off stump, and Wareham both times picks it, steps back, forehands it over mid-off, who's up for 4. So she's like, cool, I'll just hit you for 6 when you bowl this way, and I'll hit you for 4 that way.
It's the
and
depth,
got dropped
isn't it?
off the last ball of the
Yeah,
innings.
well, it's that depth thing that we've come back to time and again when discussing the Australian women's national side. It cascades through the pyramid, right? So they've had these expanded contracts from 2017. Funnily enough, that's when Georgia Wareham makes her international debut. Not funnily enough at all, right? It's all consistent. It's all in pulling in the same direction. It's an organised approach.
Yep.
It's given them the depth that when she missed a lot of cricket through injury, that there was a system there for her to rehabilitate, to come back through domestic cricket, to return to the top table and to do well again. Whereas had she been 5 years older, maybe an injury of that nature might have set her back for 3 or 4 years, or maybe she never would have gotten back. There would have been players to have jumped her in the queue, as Alana King, of course, did, but maybe she would have found
really
it hard.
well.
Nothing wrong with what Alana King's doing, by the way. I mean, she, in hindsight, was a visionary selection for the Women's Ashes 2 years ago. I know we argued the corner of Amanda Jade Wellington quite hard, and we'll continue doing that. That's good. Competitive tension. Having 3 high-quality leg spinners in the national ranks has got to be a good thing.
Get them all in there. If 2 was working, get 3.
Yeah.
But so I liked that once Wareham was fit, then there was a sense of, okay, well, they'll pick her ahead of King probably because she has the better batting. She's a bit more of a skiddy sort of bowler, whereas King's a bit more give it some loop. But getting them both in the same side, man, that really worked, because Beaumont flies out, makes a half century, plays beautifully again, keeps picking the gaps. And Beaumont has a habit of getting out to absolutely world-class leg break deliveries. Wellington at 2017 in North Sydney, the only good ball that day on an absolute dead pitch. But King gets her with one that's almost as good, the classic drift across, turn back, hit the outside of off stump, leg break bowler, and then picks up the next 2 as well. Well, she's already got Knight with the slider at that point, then she gets Capsy caught in the deep. So 3 for 40-odd for King and the 1 for Wareham as well that starts things off.
Yeah, I think that both Aussie wrist spinners keep the stumps in play almost all of the time. Yes, there are the balls that spin square, which is in the gift of any decent wrist spinner, I suppose. But it's the ones that go on with the arm. The fact that there are a couple out to the slider today, keeping the stumps in the frame, keeping the front pad there as well, so that when sweeping, there's always an extra element of risk to it. So yeah, they're top class, and it made Sciver-Brunt's innings all the more impressive, by the way. We should double back on that. 111 from 99, her 6 one-day ton, but this doesn't even start to tell the story of our last couple of years. Like, this sustained run of form, not even a couple of years, it's 12 months really, because you've got to go back to when she was captain of the T20 side for the Commonwealth Games. They don't make the final.
Her World Cup final was pretty good in March.
No, sorry, quite right, yes. But if you want to fast forward to last summer, they don't make the final of that Commonwealth Games under her, with Heather Knight missing. They don't win a medal, which was a big thing at the time. Yep. She takes a break from the game for personal reasons, for mental health reasons, really. She described at the time, missed the India series, which felt like it had a bit riding on it because it was leading towards yet another World Cup, this time in the T20 format. She returns to the side after that. There's a change of coach, has a great World Cup, has a brilliant Women's Premier League, and that form continues now into the Women's Ashes, where she's comfortably the most important all-round player for England. And it felt to me, watching it, that when she was on about 30, there was never any doubt that Sciver was going to be there at the end. The question was, could someone go with her? She's gone to that next level, and as you should, like, she's 30. Remember that, and Henry Moran had this recently, she made her international debut a decade ago in front of kind of friends and family only at a club ground in Leicester, to now playing in front of packed houses. Another one of those today at the Ageas Bowl in Southampton. This is the theme of Sciver's career. She is trended up as cricket's got bigger and bigger. There's been more and more money on offer, and she's gone from level to level. And I'm so thrilled for her on a personal level that she was able to be, albeit in a losing side, the one that kept England all the way to the end.
So they're 7 down, just past 200. It looks like the game's gone, and then she puts on 76 with Sarah Glenn, who did her bit as well. Hung in there, hit a couple of big shots, but mostly just pushed it around. They just left themselves that little bit too much to do, and there was that bit of lack of clarity about when to take runs in the last couple of overs, when to take the single, when to turn it down. Turns one down sort of at the end of the 49th, but then she takes one at the start of the 50th, which probably shouldn't have done in retrospect. They need 15 off that last over, so she needs 13 off the last three balls, and off the last four balls. Hits a four that almost carries for six.
Yeah.
So it's 11 off the last three that they need, and that one nearly carries for six and doesn't. So it's 7 off the last two. Gets a brace, doesn't get all of it. They get back for the second, and then she can't clear the boundary. It would have been 6 to win, 4 to tie.
I think I said to you at the time that's going to be the difference when the 4 didn't quite go for 6. Like, she got underneath that one and it just didn't quite carry. But you're right, having Sarah Glenn for company, who, domestic cricket would suggest that Glenn's got the ability to bat higher up the list for England. It's just never really quite happened for her at this next level. Hits the ball sweetly, played her role to perfection today, with the exception of a couple of times when they got their sums wrong, maybe with who should be on strike for the following over. But found the rope a number of times. One dominant pull that across her front pad, which wasn't without risk. A little under edge as well. That'll happen when you're in a tight chase. But she did everything right. People will look at her strike rate and say they've lost by 3 runs and a strike rate of 62. But she was doing exactly what they needed her to do, and they were so far out from the finish line when she arrived.
And when you've got Sciver-Brunt at the other end, then you're allowed to play for your teammate and let her strike rate make up for yours. That's the way it should have gone. Final word, Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Let's have the Hall of Fame, where we pick the things that we enjoyed today. It's brought to you by Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City.
We love them. We're grateful to have their support. We're going to be talking more about them this week when we go to Manchester for the Men's Ashes. All of our daily shows are brought to you thanks to Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City. More extra, less ordinary. We'll have a lot more to say when we get up to Old Trafford in a couple of days.
Now, I think for me, it's another close finish. It's another, obviously we all wanted it to go to the next one because it would have been Game 7 as well. It would have been like playoffs, like the Cincinnati Bengals or whatever.
There would have been so many lovely intros written about Game 7.
Totally. I was planning them out already, so disappointed to have missed out there. But the fact that you get another tight finish, another both results possible off the last ball, all results possible, I suppose.
The Red Sox fielder, is it Bill Buckner? The ball went through his legs in Game 7, and the Oakland A's and when the San Francisco earthquake in 1989. These are the things the lost intros of Jeff Lemon.
The was it Game 7 with the Cubs when the fan reaches over the wall and spoils the catch?
That was in '94. I don't know whether it was Game 7. It was certainly in the postseason.
Certainly in the postseason. So, just that we've had brilliant finish after brilliant finish, and the players must be exhausted. Like the emotional peaks and troughs, the delight of Bristol for England, how deflated they'll be feeling now, but then wanting to get up and spoil Australia's party again like they did in 2017, see if they can at least leave the series level. There's so much, there's a fair bit still riding on it, even though the trophy's destination is secured.
I just think for Hall of Fame, it was the body language a couple of times that made me smile, and also I wish it was different. With Sciver bringing up 100, instead of being able to celebrate, she actually looks a little bit gutted, because at that point, only I think 19 from 9 or something, and she's probably thinking, we're not going to get there. Like her entire, also, I can't fixate on the personal milestone. I've got to keep going. But the probability of it happening from there, it being so low, and at the same time, that moment where the whole crowd go up and celebrate, and the last ball of the penultimate over, which we've said to me, it's a free hit. It's a free hit for Sarah Glenn here. And everyone's saying to each other, you could hear, I think it was Grace Harris on the back, free hit. Nat Sciver, free hit. Everyone's like, free hit, free hit, free hit. Doesn't nail it. Gets a single.
Doesn't nail it, or didn't get the single. She came down and got sent back. In the end, we got Winifred waving at you from the window.
My daughter through the window, who's just had her bath. Hello, darling.
Hi there. Hi, Winnie. We'll do a big hit one of these days. I think that brings us to the end of it. It's been so much fun. There's one more game to go. There's the third ODI. Hopefully it's not washed out, and we will get another match and another final word Women's Ashes daily from there.
We will indeed. Thanks for listening to these and watching these throughout. If you don't follow us on YouTube, you can do that. Our live shows on the 26th of July at the Phoenix in Soho. If you really like what we do and all the podcasts we're making, patreon.com/The Final Word, where you can get half-price tickets to the aforementioned live show. An interview with Enid Bakewell, the all-time great, is in the feed from a couple of days ago, and all the rest of it. We'll be at Manchester in a couple of days to continue this series of Ashes dailies and the women's Ashes final game that comes before that. Adam Collins, Jeff Lemon for Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City. More extra, less ordinary. Good night.
Good night, everybody. Good night, Winnie.